it's not too often that we get to highlight good leadership. And when we're talking about facing accusations, this next story may not really fall within the guise of responding to accusations, but it's definitely responding to challenges. And there were some accusations of Red Bull's performance. Now, this is now a little bit old news because I wanted to talk about it last week, and then we had a great topic last week, so I kind of got put on the back burner. But I wanted to share this, that there was this interview, and link is below in description, but there was this interview by Sky News or Sky Sports that was interviewing Christian Horner, who is the Red Bull not CEO. He's the Red Bull chief engineer, managing director, team manager.
I think he's CEO of the team. Yeah. That's a good enough description.
That's it. He's the leader. Yeah. He's the one that runs. He's the guy that runs the show. Now, if Singapore GP now, Red Bull have won like the last 22 out of their last 23 races, and then this year they have won every single race. I think they've run every single race this year. And Max Verstappen, they've already won the constructors championship, and they're doing great, guys. This is just a standout year for them. Any sports fan to be able to watch this season, no matter what sport you follow, it's just enjoyable to see a team just absolutely on their game and dominate every single race until Singapore. And at Singapore, Red Bull did not even make it out of the second qualifying round. They had real problems. They had problems with their car setup and everything like that. And there's all these accusations that, well, it's because they were cheating the rules, and there was new rules that came in. They call them TDs, technical directives. They're constantly changing in F1, and they brought in some new rules that apparently now there's these accusations against Red Bull that, well, because they were cheating the system, and this is now proof that they haven't that they weren't following the rules and everything like that. So, I'm telling you, this is a little bit old, because since this race in Singapore last week, they were in Japan, and they absolutely dominated and won hands down again, and so it was crazy. But what I felt was really interesting with this interview, and link in description, go and watch this video. They're challenging Christian Horner against setup and drivers and management and all those sorts of things, but the way that he responds to all the accusations, all the challenges, I think demonstrates really good leadership. And it's very rare that we actually get to see public demonstration of good leadership. There's a couple of things that he does if you're watching this interview. One, he's actually very calm, very controlled. He has a great presence. He delivers everything confidently. He talks technically, so he knows what he's talking about. He obviously comes across as an expert and authority of what he's saying. But the key that I see here that sets him apart in this moment is he not once did he blame anything, a person or a thing. He did not blame anyone for driver error, which the drivers made some mistakes in their qualifying. The setup, he didn't blame the team for the wrong setup. Didn't blame the change in the technical directives. He didn't blame the condition. Didn't blame the tires. All what he did is he kept saying, "We need to figure out this problem. We kept including himself and the team, but throughout the whole time he had complete faith in his team. He kept emphasizing that the team are great. I've got they're like, well, how are you going to overcome it? He's like, we've got a great team. They're a great team. They're going to overcome it, no problems. And so I think it's awesome that how he delivers this his response to everything, even the fact that there was an issue with the tires not reaching like their optimum window, he's even just talking about, rather than blaming the tires, he's like, oh, we weren't able to find that optimum window for the tire and things like that. It was just, I thought it was absolutely beautiful and a perfect demonstration of good leadership and how you respond to accusations and challenges. He included himself. He encouraged his team. He had complete confidence and faith in his team. He spoke up how awesome they were and how good they were. And he addressed the issues without blaming anything. I'm sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there because I thought when I saw this, I was just almost jaw to the floor because you don't see this too often. Dr. Rod, what was your take when you saw him respond to these things?
Pretty much the same, actually. I watched that interview and I thought how measured his responses were. He was articulate. I don't think I heard him say or once in that interview. So he was clearly in possession of the facts, and he presented factually, as it were. He didn't divulge anything that might have happened privately because he might have had some conversations with some people in the technical team. He might have had some conversations with the drivers, but he didn't divulge anything that happened privately, which I think was a very good thing. The other thing I would note, though, too, is those three interviewers, they were actually good interviewers as well because they displayed a good level of inquisitiveness, but they weren't aggressive. And so I thought both sides of that interview, the interviewers and the interviewee, they were all highly professional. They were informative because we're left with no misunderstanding as to what the issues were, but there was no attempt by anybody actually in that interchange to level blame at anybody individually. If there was anyone to blame individually or a number to blame, then that was done in private and kept in private, and I think that was totally appropriate for this kind of thing.
I'm really glad you brought up the reporters because I agree with you, but I didn't make note of that until you said it. It was like, yes, you're absolutely right. They were hard. They kept asking some of the, repeated some of the questions a couple of times to try to break him. So they were doing their job, but they were respectful.
They were
right.
They were,
but also they were researched. They came with the right amount. I think that, dare I say, this should be the interview that should go down in the history books of interviews, that for both parties, this is an ideal interview.
It's a good case study. It's a very good case study, my word.
And actually the funny thing about this is at a sporting event. This is live. This was after qualifying. Everything's still going on. It's not like this is a week later. They had time to research. They had time to sit down and prepare their questions and their answers and everything like that. This is in the heat of the moment. Now, obviously the reporters would have prepared a little bit, but it's not like they had days to do it and teams of interviewers or teams of researchers to do that. And Christian Horner wouldn't have had his time to do that either. Yeah, I think that this was a great example, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, because we're talking about facing accusations as leaders, and I think that this kind of demonstrates a great way to be able to respond to those things. Be measured. Don't blame. Don't point the finger at people. Don't try to blame things and changes situations or the FIA or whoever it is.
And he didn't make any excuses either, did he?
No. He did not.
Yeah. It was a very good interview, I felt.
Actually, another thing that really stood out to me was this was a team that was on track to win every single race this year, and to be continue to break records. And Max Verstappen is now, he did 10 in a row, I think it was, that broke the record last GP. And it was just unexpected. It was just continue on this very, and there was no how do I say it, romanticism about like, oh, we lost this fairy tale thing and oh no, it's awful. But there was none of that they weren't clinging to a perfect result. They're expecting mistakes and challenges and failures, and like they've now lost that fairy tale kind of story, but there wasn't they weren't crying, they weren't wallowing in their tears, so to speak, for that. So what would you say, Dr. Rod, then, to a leader who their teams are, look, it'd be great. Wouldn't it be awesome to be leading a team that is winning right now? Like that is just winning like Red Bull, like everything's win, 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 win. What do you say to a leader that has a team that are just on a streak and then they have a loss? Because that can really mess up morale. That can really mess up motivation. That can really mess with a team. Like, and it's, we hear about people, they can just have one loss and then they just go into a slump because they're riding on their high, and then all of a sudden they lose their identity in always winning and things like that. What would you say to a leader that is leading a team of winners that have a failure? How do you help them look past that failure?
Well, failure is a pretty tough thing. There's no doubt about it. But I think in the case of a sporting code, the kind of thing we're talking about here, I do think you need to be analytical, try to identify the issues that led to that disappointing result, but importantly, identify what you can do in order to improve next time.
Yep.
In other words, you do have to analyse the past, but you do need to develop a very strong focus on the future. So it really hinges on, so what can we learn from this negative experience? What can we do differently next time that will produce a better result? But I don't see a lot of point, often after a sporting game when the coaches and so on or the captains are interviewed, they will tend to blame. And I think that's something to be avoided as leaders. Let's not do that. Let's not blame weather conditions or the referee or anything. I think the attitude should be, you know what? We didn't get the result we wanted, so we're going to analyse that and we're going to build some strategies so that we don't fall into those same traps or mistakes next time, and we fully anticipate that we're going to get back onto our winning streak pretty quickly.
I like what you're talking about looking in the future, because there's one thing that they did in this interview, which was started talking about Japan. Asuka, I think the track's called, or whatever the track is called. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. I enjoy F1. I'm not like a devout fan where I know everything about it. Just see what's happening. They were asking about looking forward. Because, what do you do looking forward? And obviously now that race has been this weekend, and they definitely overcame it because they were actually, their pre-race simulations, they actually expected that their car would struggle in Singapore and in Japan. So they obviously were expecting two races to not go well for them. They did fix it, and that's the good thing. Like, they looked forward and they did fix it, because obviously they won last weekend. But one interesting thing that I found Christian Horner to say in this interview is they asked him about, what are you going to change for Japan? What are you doing looking forward? And he just kept saying, we're still in the middle of this weekend. Yes, we've got a bad result, but we've still got a race tomorrow. We've still got to do our best tomorrow. And I thought it was really good that, yes, even in the middle of a failure, we do need to look forward, but not at the expense of what we're doing now. We still have a responsibility for what we're doing right now to keep working on. We can't just go, well, this weekend's a loss, let's just throw it out the window and pack up and leave. They didn't do that. They kept fighting. I think Max ended up getting up to about a fifth position. I think he ended fifth or sixth, I think it was. So they still try to fight hard for that weekend while still looking forward to for the future. So I think that's a good lesson, is while you're in the middle of something, if you are in the middle of a loss, sometimes don't throw in the towel. You can't just throw everything away, because you still have responsibilities. Maybe you're working on a project and it's it's falling apart. You don't just go, well, stuff that client. I'm not gonna do anything more for that client. I'm just gonna move on. Finish it out. It may not be as awesome as you can, but finish it out, do what you can, and then start looking forward to the future. Fix as much as you can in the moment. But as a leader, this is a perfect example. Make sure you're not blaming anything. Make sure you are controlled. Make sure you're researched. Make sure you know what you're talking about, but don't blame. Acknowledge the problems, but also don't blame. And as a leader, one of the biggest lessons we can learn is use the word we rather than pointing the finger at anyone or anything in particular. Hey, you've just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If it challenged your leadership or inspired you in some way, put a comment below. And if you want to watch the full episode or more content like this, check out our channel. And hey, consider subscribing while you're there.